Next up, we have Isabella from what3words. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us
Hi,
today.
thank you, Dan, for the introduction. Really glad to be here this afternoon. And I'll be talking a bit more about what3words and specifically what we do in the space of mobility. We're not a mobility company. We are an addressing system, but a lot of the applications of what3words are really in the mobility space. Here we go. So first of all, another addressing system, and what we want to do specifically is being as precise as possible, but also as easy as possible to use, to be shared, to be communicated, to be remembered. And you might think, but why do you need another addressing system if we do have amazing postcodes in the UK, we have great addressing, we have GPS coordinates? And the main reason, or one of the reasons, is really that traditional addresses were not created for the digital age, for all the different things that we do in today's world. So we do use a number of apps that do rely on location services. Think about ride hailing, or every time you're ordering food delivery, or even just any navigation of online map. So do you remember when was the last time that someone gave you an address that you're not familiar with and you used it without entering it in any sort of digital tool like Google Maps or Apple Maps or any navigation system? I personally don't remember, because we've become really reliant on all this digital technology. But something that we don't often think about is that all these services that rely on location rely on addresses that haven't changed a lot, or actually at all, in the last 300 years. And they were not really created for all these different use cases that we have today. And so sometimes when I talk about addresses and traditional addresses not being really precise, or people might say, oh, okay, sure, that's something that in parts of the world where there are absolutely no addresses, like middle of the desert or developing markets. Or sometimes they might concede that, yes, in some rural parts of the UK, you might have trouble finding exactly your Airbnb or your destination. But that's actually not the entire truth, even in cities, and even again in a country like the UK, where we do have a really, generally speaking, solid addressing system and postcode system. We do have a lot of situations where it's just not enough. One example is the prevalence of duplicate addresses, or addresses that are so similar they're very confusing. I think that in London we counted about 30 or more church streets, roads, alley, etc. And that's clearly because like they used to be different villages, and then one day became London. But you also have huge buildings with multiple entrances. You have new builds, they're still not geolocated on tools like Google Maps. And so geolocation, which is that technology that when you type an address, it will just pin it on the map, is quite good at maybe building level, but not really at doorstep level. And also voice is becoming a really primary input mode. And surely traditional addresses were not thought with voice technology in mind. So again, let's say that you are traveling and you just have like a street name or a town name that you have no idea how to pronounce, maybe because you are abroad, but you know, this image is actually a real place and it's in California. So how do you actually speak this into your phone or into your navigation system? And then English is a good example of a language with tons of homophones. There are words that sound exactly the same, but they're actually written, spelled differently, and they mean completely different things. So think about here and here, or many other words. Those are completely unfriendly for voice input. But this one in this picture is one of my favorite examples, because if you said 241st Street, on the other hand, that could be interpreted as at least 3 different addresses, all 3 actually possible and existing in 3 different parts of New York City. So again, traditional addressing quite confusing for voice technology, generally speaking. And so absolutely, there are other ways to go around the limitations of traditional addresses or street addresses. One is dropping pins and sharing pins, but that's not always possible, and you can't really take a pin with you. And the other one is GPS coordinates. perfectly fine, they're really precise when you're talking about machine-to-machine communication, but whenever you have a human being, so it's human-to-machine or human-to-human communication, it becomes quite confusing, error-prone, and you just try to tell your friend next time to meet you at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, etc., and they will probably think that you've just gone a bit crazy. And so that's how we created what3words about 8 years ago. We're based in London. And the idea is really, really simple, like many good ideas. And the idea was like, let's just create and cover the entire surface of the world with a grid of 3x3 meter squares. So these small squares that you see in the pictures, they're all 3x3 meters. The entire world, including the oceans, is covered completely in this grid. Each one of these small 3x3 meter squares has been given a fixed, a unique address, which is made of 3 words. 3 simple words of the English language. In this case, you see kite, chat, dine is the only one square out of 57 trillion with that address. There is no other square in the world that is called kite, chat, dine. And since we want the system to be really user-friendly, human-friendly, clearly, you need to be able to use it in your own language. And so the entire system is available in, at the moment, 47 languages, and we keep adding more. And again, it's every square is going to have a unique address in all these languages. So what do we have to do with mobility? Well, so what3words is useful wherever precise addressing is useful and necessary, and when there is a human being communicating their location. And so we tend to think of the type of scenarios where what3words is useful as locating people, locating things, and then moving people and moving things. And these last 2 use cases are really what closest to the mobility space. And so I'll spend the next few minutes to give you a number of examples connected to the world of mobility where what3words is being used. So first of all, when we talk about mobility, the first thing that comes to mind to many people is driving your own car. And so if you drive a car, or if you ever try to set up the nav system in your car or in any car, you might know that in-car navigation systems are not always the most user-friendly. Sometimes trying to type or to input your destination can be quite painful, especially with those old-fashioned like round things. So again, what many people do is just like default to using their phones. They just type the address into Google Maps and then they use their phone, even though they might have spent tons of money for the in-car navigation system that comes with the car. So yeah, what3words can be integrated with any in-car navigation system. We work with many car OEMs. In this example, you see Mercedes. So when you enter in your Mercedes, you can simply say, hey, take me to look, opponent sedated, and the car will just take you exactly to that 3-word address, so to that 3x3 square meter destination. And you can also type it. And this is like true for Mercedes, but also for a number of other car OEMs, including Tata Motors, Ford, Mitsubishi, and many others to come in the coming weeks. So again, I'll be touching on a number of themes and use cases that have already come up in the panel and up to this time today. And clearly one of the very positive upward trends is its EV, electric vehicles. When you have an electric car, something becomes really crucial is find a charging point and a charging station. And charging points are not always super easy to locate immediately because they might be massive parking lots or they might be along the side of a street. And that's why quite a few aggregators and EV charging point networks use what3words to pinpoint exactly the location of the charging point station. So in this image, you can see Charge Place Scotland, and as you can see in the small maps, every time you click on one of the charging points, you get the 3-word address. Again, when you drive, you also need to park your car. And again, the entrances of parking garages or parking lots are not always the easiest to find. And that's also why a number of parking aggregators, parking apps, and just in parking operators, in this case, NCP, which is one of the largest in the UK, use what3words to be able to give the customers the exact 3 words of the entrance of the car park. So in this case, you can see that at the top right, that you will see the 3-word address of the entrance of this car park when you go on the website, but also in your confirmation email. So in the confirmation email, just click on the what3words address and you can navigate directly to that entrance. And so unfortunately, something that might happen sooner or later when you drive is that you might have a breakdown, and your car might break down in the middle of nowhere, maybe in the countryside or maybe along the highway, somewhere that you're not really able to describe exactly where you are. Again, we work with the AA in the UK and with many other roadside assistance companies that allow you to give the 3 words or exactly where you are, and then they can come and find you immediately with absolutely no glitches. And again, sometimes if you have the app on your phone, you can simply say that. Or in many cases, they can send you a small, like a text message with a link, and they will allow you to find 3 words of where you are really, really easily. And so now, going from more traditional mobility cars, I want to talk a bit more about city mobility, which is another big theme. And in the past few years, our cities have seen this a boom of new mobility and shared mobility. So bikes, e-bikes, and scooters, which are great, but also sometimes can cause a bit of clutter in our cities. And it's not unusual to find abandoned scooters or scooters and bikes that are parked where they shouldn't, for example, right in front of an accessible entrance. So for this reason, we do partner with companies like Lime, so that any customers, any citizen, finding a scooter or a bike parked somewhere where it shouldn't be, they can simply send Lime an email or give them a call and give them exactly the 3-word location or where this abandoned scooter is. And that, helping our cities to stay nice and tidy. Also, again, another big trend is cycling, something that many cities in the UK are encouraging. I know I'm based in London, and it's been on the mayor's agenda for a long time, right? It's really becoming a priority. And when you are cycling around the city, the last thing you want people to do is just to keep looking at their phone. This app is called Beeline. So they created a small compass that you can put on the handlebars of your bike. And what3words is integrating the companion app. So you can enter the 3-word address of the destination, exact place where you want to get, and then the directions will be sent to you in the compass. You can simply follow the arrow and get to your destination. And earlier on, I was mentioning ride-hailing as one of the big digital use cases that really relies on specific locations. We do work with a number of ride-hailing companies. This is actually more of a traditional taxi companies, Addison Lee. But we are integrating Addison Lee's app, so you can enter the destination pickup point with a what3word address and make the entire process a lot smoother. And to be honest, we initially, when we were talking to taxi companies, we thought that the best use case will be destination, like drop-off points. But a lot of them have been telling us that actually pickup points are quite tricky, because like we think, well, you usually get picked up from where you are, and you can just share your current location. But they tell us that the blue dot keeps moving, and people might order the cab when they're not yet at that location. So it is often quite a big pain point for taxi drivers to find you. And besides taxi apps and ride-hailing apps, we also work with a number of smaller taxi companies. So you can also call them to book a cab and give the 3-word address of your pickup point and or destination. It's great that we've been talking about accessibility in the panel before, because like the different situations that I've described so far, if I get many of us get dropped off across the street or a few blocks away, it's really inconvenient. It can be inefficient, annoying, but if you have accessibility needs, it can actually be a big problem. And so for that reason, hundreds, actually thousands probably of venues around the world are using what3words to pinpoint the exact location of their accessible entrances and accessible facilities, so that anyone with accessibility needs can be 100% sure they will be dropped off, they can drive or navigate exactly where they need to be. So up to this point, I've been talking more about moving people. So now shifting gears to moving things, moving goods. That's really about logistics, which is becoming really a big use case for what3words, especially in the last 12 months when e-commerce and deliveries have just boomed incredibly. And so when we talk about deliveries and logistics, it's extremely important to have a precise address, because the more precise the address that you have in terms of like delivery points, the more efficiency you gain, the less time you spend delivering, the fewer lost packages. And so it's really a win-win for the logistics company in terms of efficiency, but also for the customer. And that's why in this example, you can see DPD, which is in Germany. And from a pilot that we did last year, they calculated like 15% of time saved between using what3words or using a traditional address, which might seem like maybe not too much, but for companies that deliver thousands of packages a day, that's really quite a big saving in efficiencies and time and cost. And so for that reason, we also work with thousands of e-commerce websites that accept what3words as destination, like actually delivery address at checkout. And so logistics actually one of the industries that is, I'm quite impressed the kind of innovation that is seeing lately with all these startups and new companies specializing in hyper local deliveries or near instant deliveries, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which sounds insane, but they actually managed to do that. And when your value proposition is actually to deliver in 45 minutes or 10 minutes, every minute really counts. So having a really precise delivery address really matters. And again, as I was saying before, traditional addresses might take you kind of to the building, but not necessarily to the entrance that you need. So this example is Pake, which is a courier that allows anyone in the city of London to send anything within minutes, whether it's a peer-to-peer courier or business to consumer. And so we are integrated so that users can use what3words for delivery points. This is interesting because I think that, again, you can't talk about innovation in logistics and deliveries without talking about drones. And just maybe 5 years ago, it felt like drone deliveries were a bit sci-fi things and maybe would happen, I don't know, in 2030, and actually it's already reality. And they're pretty useful to deliver goods and packages and parcels in places that are not super easy to reach. So in this picture here, this is like a project from last December, so just a few months ago, that we did with Royal Mail and Drone Prep, which is a drone company, to deliver a number of parcels and packages to the Isle of Mull, so right there in Scotland, which is a beautiful place. And like many beautiful places, it's not super easy to reach, especially some of the places up there. And again, I can surely see we do work with a number of drone companies, and I see this as one of the fields and that is going to grow massively. And now finally, just a slightly different take on mobility, because again, up to this point, I've shown you use cases and examples where having a precise address can improve efficiency, user experience, etc., etc. But there are a number of situations where having the precise location and getting there in time can really make a difference in terms of saving lives. And so what3words is being used for years now and all over the world by emergency services. So in this example, you see helicopter rescues in South Africa. Again, helicopter rescues are really, really expensive. You need to know exactly where you're going, also in terms of like knowing the range that the helicopter can travel to. So that's absolutely big use case, but more in general, it's not just for helicopters, ambulances, police, really any place, that anything that has to do with emergencies. And I'm glad to say that actually Police Scotland was the last of the latest emergency services in the UK starting to use and to accept what3words just a few weeks ago at the beginning of the month. And so with Police Scotland now, we're accepted by 85% of emergency services in the UK, which means that basically, if you call 999, there's a good chance, it's nearly certain that you can use what3words to tell them exactly where you are, but it's also a good chance that they will ask you for a what3word address if they can't locate you super easily. That was a bit of a whistle stop, but I wanted to leave some time for questions. And also, this is my email address for more than happy for anyone to just reach out if you want to continue this conversation. But yeah, we're really excited of everything that is coming up in the mobility space. Thank you.